Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm Donovan.
And I'm Jordan.
Join us as we go into the pages.
Podcast! So,
We
had
decided
a
to go.
change of heart.
Yes.
Well, I don't think I fully realized how soon the next secret project is coming out. It's next month.
Yeah, next month.
And we don't think that's enough time to give Elantris the time and attention it deserves.
Yes,
So.
and it definitely deserves it. I haven't read it, but I already know it deserves it.
Yeah, so we came up with another idea, which I think works better, actually. I think we might sprinkle these kind of episodes throughout, and just like as little fillers or little treats here and there.
Treats, yes.
But we're going to look at Arcanum Unbounded. For those who don't know, Arcanum Unbounded is a collection of Cosmere stories. It's from short to medium. You have things such like as Edge Dancer from Stormlight, Secret History from Mistborn. And then it's just some other random things from planets that don't have their own full books, at least not yet. I don't know if there's plans to make it, but at least as of now.
Yeah, who knows? Brandon's got a lot of stuff going on. Who knows what he's planning?
Yeah, exactly.
It's all good, though, whatever he's planning.
And we're not necessarily going to go in order of the book because the book isn't chronological. It's just kind of a collection. Today we decided to start with the Taldane system, which is a pretty cool name, I think.
And so, like, what the name of the story is just White Sand?
Yeah, so White Sand actually is a little different than what I described. So White Sand does have graphic novels that have been made. I personally haven't read any of them.
Neither have I. But
there's a little excerpt of one in here, and we get a little chapter and prologue that Brandon says in the postscript of Arcanum Unbounded that this was kind of it's just a story that he really wanted to write and something that he wanted to do, but he's never had time to do a full-fledged novel. And then a company, I forget the name, approached him and offered to make it a graphic novel, and that's what he decided to do. So this little excerpt in Arcanum Unbounded is about that. So.
And I was excited about this just because, I'm excited about anything Cosmere.
The first thing we got to know about a Cosmere book is, what is the investiture? What's the powers? What's the magic?
Yes. Those are the first questions you always got to ask.
It's pretty cool here. So this planet is interesting in the sense that it kind of has two suns, but not like Tatooine two suns.
Yeah.
You have like a big supergiant star that's on one side of the planet, and you have a mini white dwarf, I think they call it, on the other side of the planet. And the sun, at least the big one, doesn't set. It just kind of stays there. And so it's just kind of like always daytime on one side. And since the white dwarf on the other side is so small, it's kind of gloomy and not gloomy. It's described as like it's always just like it's twilight, like just when the sun's setting, like that kind of like it's light enough to see really well, but it's not like full on sunshine. Like that's kind of how it was described.
Yeah, I'm glad you changed that because this isn't like the first thing they said about that. It's not gloomy or dim.
That's what they said. Like when people come, they describe it as gloomy. So I think if you're used to like really bright weather to go to somewhere that's always twilight, it's never lighter, it's never darker, it might be kind of gloomy.
I think we definitely would find it gloomy.
Yeah. I think of my wife. My wife's an Arizona native, and when we moved to Utah, even the change of a little more rain made her kind of depressed.
She's used to it now.
Yeah, she's used to it now. But when we were first here, the first winter was real tough. Just kind of not having that constant sunshine. So, I think they're kind of addressing most people like it's not actually gloomy. It's kind of
fine. You just gotta get used to it.
Yeah, just gotta get used to it.
Gotta be used to depression. I wonder if it's probably like the living in Alaska for those few months or whatever the sunlight never comes out. They must know what it's like to live on this planet on the dark side.
Okay, so the first question, what is the investiture? What's the magic of the system? And the investiture comes from at least the people think that the investiture comes from the white giant sun. And it bakes down onto the sand. So like the white side of the planet is like desert. Just all desert.
Yeah.
With like underground cities and stuff. The way it makes it seem like. And then the dark side is what they call it, is a little more lush. I can imagine it like a little more jungly, probably because it's not so glaringly bright all the time. But the sun bakes the sand and invests the sand with power. And there are certain people who can access and manipulate that power.
Which already right there, that's super cool. It's like how it works, I don't know, but you just gotta put your sand out in the sun and it gets power.
Yeah.
It's almost like a more powerful form of energy than like stormlight. In a way, I'm only thinking because like the sun never sets, so they can just put the sand out whenever.
Yeah, it does say that takes about 4 hours because once sand is used, you can invest it and make it, manipulate it and make it do stuff, but then it becomes black. And it takes about 4 hours for it to become white again. So I guess that's why it's called white sand.
I don't know what that was, but okay.
And so, of course, as we can imagine, society kind of revolves around sand. I got some major Dune vibes from this book, as well as a little bit of Wheel of Time vibes.
How so, Wheel of Time?
We'll get there, but
okay.
I'll start with Dune. Like, it's just like this desert. You haven't read Dune, have you? You've seen the movie, though.
I've seen the movie, yeah.
So, it's like a desert planet. Like, everything kind of like revolves around sun and stuff like that. That's kind of how I pictured it. And then you have like this elite group of people who are sand masters that can have the ability to manipulate the sand. And this short story, it's essentially a prologue of the book, or of the graphic novel, if you could think of that. And it starts with an initiation trial. Mm-hmm. So they have a bunch of kids that are hopefuls to join the DM, is what they call it, and to be trained to become sand masters. And in order to be accepted, they make you hold the sand, and if you can make it glow, they'll let you come in and join their little.
Yeah, it kind of gives you like the classic vibes of like these type of things where it's like these people trying to enter a super prestigious school, and you got to like work from birth in order to get in. But these guys are more like, you just have to have the ability. But still, it kind of felt like a way like, oh, you can't do it.
And for some reason, it's only men. I don't know why it's only men, only boys.
I didn't even think about that.
I just don't know why, if that's how they accept it. If they only accept men, or if for some reason women don't do it. I don't know. It doesn't say, but it's only men.
Are there even women mentioned?
No, and whenever they mention it, they always say the sons get tried and the boys come. So it doesn't say anything about there being women.
The only thing I can think of that I mentioned was one of the Sandmaster's wives.
Yes.
But that was it.
So the Grand Master, I forget what he's called.
We'll see in a second.
And they don't call them masters. What do they call them? They call them like Melstrels, or what do they call it? Mastrel. So you have the Mastrels, which are kind of like I kind of pictured them as the Jedi Council. And then you have the Lord Mastrel, which is kind of like the Grand Master. And the story kind of revolves around the Lord Mastrel and his son. So he has a bunch of sons, and none of them have been able to have the ability to manipulate sand, which is like a big, shameful, embarrassing thing. And his youngest and last son is taking the trial to see if he can get in. And he seems like one of those dads that's just a class A jerkwad.
Yeah, totally. He doesn't seem to take any interest or have a care for any of his kids, especially because he's like the Grand Sand Master or Mastrel, and he's had no kids. And apparently, like, that's super unheard of in this. And
yeah, for someone of his standing, like, he's the most powerful of the Sand Masters, and none of his kids.
It's like Darth Vader having kids, and they're the opposite of force
yeah. Imagine
wielding.
Luke is Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah, there you go. That's the way to put it. And I think they were all saying, I don't know if it was like something. This Grand Master. Is that what they actually call him? He's a Grand Master?
He's the Lord Mastrel.
Lord Mastrel.
That's his official title.
Okay. So they're thinking, I don't know if it was him who started it, or if it's just like people were thinking this because of who he is, but like they're saying it's because he married a woman from the dark side. So like not only is his future like kids cursed because of that, but like even like his past people is like cursed. Where it was
Yeah, it's like
Okay.
seemed very ancestral focused.
Yeah.
Like his line is ruined and he's shamed his family.
yeah, they've got that total vibe, that total belief that blood matters so much.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. I guess maybe it could in this book, but in real life,
And it's very political. Like this whole area. This is kind of where I'm starting to get the Wheel of Time vibes. It kind of has like the White Tower kind of feels. You know, they initiate only a select few.
oh yeah, that's right.
And then based on how powerful you are, determines your standing. So like if you're not very powerful, you essentially become the servants of those who are powerful.
Which is stupid.
And then that's like all it's based on is your power. And the son, so the Lord Maestrel's name is Praxton. And Praxton's son, I forget his name, I think it's like Kenton. Is taking this, and Kenton kind of has the mindset of screw you, Dad. I'm going to prove you wrong. That I can be part of this, and I can become.
Did they say?
Maestro.
Did they say how old these kids were?
It was weird. It made it seem like because it said that they were children that were barely 2 decades old.
So that sounds like it's 20 years old.
Yeah, or barely into their second decade. I think what they said. I think that's what it was. They said they were barely into their second decade, so like 11 or 12.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking now, 11 or 12.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's old enough to have like a rebellious attitude. I was thinking he was like 5 or to 8 or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think a 12-year-old's much more rebellious than like a 8-year-old. Anyway.
They go down the line. Everyone has varying degrees of power. There's one person that has like an insane amount of power. Like when he makes the sand glow, it like pretty much acts like a flashbang. Like,
yeah.
Kind of blinds everyone around them, which is really impressive. Like hardly ever seen. Unfortunately, it's not Praxton's son, the Lord Maestrel's son.
Mm-hmm.
He goes last, and he barely has enough power to make the sand kind of flicker and turn black. And so he's initially dismissed. The guy's like, oh, my last and final disappointment. Shoo.
Yeah.
But then he pulls a technicality. He's like, technically, if I can make it glow, you have to let me in. And which is even more embarrassing. He's like, my own son defies me in front of my people, or whoever the heck these guys are. So he's like mad about that.
Maybe this kid shouldn't try to be a sand master. He should go to be a lawyer.
Yeah, so he gets in on a technicality, and the Lord Maestrel's like really upset about it. He's like, this is my legacy. This is a constant embarrassment. And 8 years pass.
Yes. Which this school has an interesting way of progressing, which
Yeah, only the Lord Maestrel can progress you.
Yes.
You can join. He can't stop you from joining if you have the ability, but you won't go anywhere unless he says so.
Yes, but you can deny it if you want.
Yeah,
you can decline.
Apparently so, because during that time he's offered the lowest. Kenton is offered the lowest position, essentially one step above an acolyte or novice.
Yeah.
4 times, and he denies it 4 times. He says, "No, I'm going to become."
And I don't remember what he does already, but I thought that was interesting. Like just thinking, like you're in 7th grade. Okay, you passed. You can go with 8th. No, I'm gonna stay in 7th grade. Or I don't know.
I would say in 7th grade until you accept me into the university. Like, okay.
But I do like that he wants to like wow them so crazy or something that they just immediately make him a Lord Maestrel or whatever the heck.
Yeah.
I need to stop
not Lord.
saying,
I think it's just Maestrel.
just Maestrel. He's not
Yeah,
going to be the Lord Maestrel.
Lord Maestrel is like the highest one, but even after all these 8 years of training, he's still very weak. So how they measure strength is how many strands you can manipulate, so strands of sand. And Maestrels, we learn, can wield at the very least 15 strands. And Kenton can only do 1, and that's it. So
That's probably why he's only offered the lowest.
Yeah, so he's pretty weak. And he makes arguments. He's like, there's masters that have been... Because there's another ability they can do, which is really cool. They can turn sand into water. I forget what that process is called. What they call it something. So this excerpt has... So since this is a graphic novel, there's a graphic novel part of this, and then there's like an actual written out typical
Looks
chapter.
more like a classic book type of thing.
Yeah, but it's the same story. So the chapter part has a little bit more detail. Like you get more of the thoughts of the people, and you get a little bit more background. And then the graphic novels kind of... I've never read graphic novels. I don't know if they're all like this, but you get more of like just a high-level view of what's going on, more of like the action.
Yeah, it's closer to a movie. It's kind of in between a movie and like a book, but in graphic novels, at least this one is kind of just like it shares the outward expressions, not anyone's inner thoughts. There's no like narrator walking you through what's going on, which in this case I think was better than the graphic novel.
So that's an ability that masters have. I'm calling them masters. I know they're maestrals, so I'm going to call them masters. That's just easier to remember. So that's one like almost required ability that masters have, is to be able to turn sand into water. And that's really important because manipulating the sand and using it takes water from your body. Kind of like we learned from Tress of the Emerald Sea. I wonder if Brandon kind of took that idea.
I wouldn't be surprised at all, because it seems too much of a coincidence that this one also is like power. And it even say somewhere in there that like if you give water to a plant, there's like an explosion of growth.
If you give it to it, so when you give it to sand, it's like explosive results.
I could have sworn it said plant.
How did it say plant?
Giving water to the tiny plant causes a chain reaction of sudden growth, energy, and realmic transition. Realmic? Anyway, that's what it says.
Yeah, so pretty much exactly like Tress.
So there's got to definitely be some connection with this and Tress.
Yeah, no, because it's Tress. It says that Tress wasn't a shard of Adenalcium, but it was like kind of as old as him. So I wonder if one of the shards saw that planet and kind of made this planet similar.
Why not?
Who knows?
Maybe needed some inspiration to know what to do. Decided to copy a little.
But anyways, Kenton can't do that, and so that's always been like a constant thing. Like, well, you can't do that, and so you can't become a master. And he's like, there were masters that weren't able to do that. And then his dad's like, there were two, and they could each wield like 24 strands, which is like almost double what most masters can do. So that's why they were masters, because they just had such raw power. And that's all they judge it on, is just your raw power, your raw ability determines what you are. And so Kenton wants to prove that that's not the only way and that's not the best way to do things. And so he decides to do the master's trial, I'm going to call it, where it's a trial that doesn't make you a master for passing, but masters do it to prove their ability, and it's really difficult, and some masters die and some masters can't do it, and some don't do very well. So he views this as a perfect opportunity to prove that even though he doesn't have the raw power, he has skill, ability, precision, and speed that comes. I kind of thought of, what's his name from Demon Slayer?
Which one?
The lightning guy. The orange one.
I don't remember now.
But he can only do the one form, but he does it like perfectly, and so it's like super powerful.
Okay,
that's
yeah.
Kind of like, I think that's what Kenton's going for. Like, he just is gonna take one little piece of sand, like one little strand of sand, and do it so well and so perfectly that it's just as good as anything a master with raw power can do. And so he joins this trial, and it's a pretty simple on the face trial, but challenging. It's essentially an obstacle course that you have to find 5 red ball things. I don't know, spheres, red spheres. And you only have, the book says an hour, but I don't know if their hours are different than ours. So it said you have an hour until the moon rises, and then he's like, I only have an hour and I've already used 60 minutes of it. I only have 30 minutes left. So I'm like, okay.
Wait, did he say you had 60 minutes or 30 minutes left?
So he said, I've used 60 minutes. I only have 30 minutes left.
Oh.
I remember it stuck out to me because I was like, that's not an hour. And I'm pretty sure he said he had an hour to... I'm pretty sure it said, I have an hour to do this task. And then later on, he's like, I've already used 60 minutes of it, and I only have 30 minutes left. I was like, okay. Maybe that's how it works with the planet with 2 suns.
It's possible, yeah. Maybe minutes are slower there. I don't know.
Oh, here it is.
I mean, oh, yeah.
Slatrify.
Okay. What is that?
Slatrify is turning sand into water.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so Kenton goes through this course, and he finds it challenging, but he's able to do it.
Yeah, so he finds 2 right off the bat, and then he comes up to like a chasm, and then it's like a 50... I don't know how long it is. It's long enough that you can't just easily jump over it, and you have to have serious propulsion. And most masters would be able to use sand to propel them, but since he can only manipulate 1 strand... Like, he can't really lift himself up. He can, like, kind of hold himself. He's, like, has good endurance. He can, like, hold himself, like, maybe a couple feet in the air, but he can't, like, launch.
Right.
And so he has to go down, jump down in the chasm, and then climb up the other side. And it's very unconventional, and all the masters are kind of like, paw, you should be elegant and leaping and be sweeping and be not climbing up like a lizard. But he gets lucky, because apparently along that cliff there's a hidden sphere, which makes sense. So that's a good hiding spot. If you expect people to just jump over it and not even look down there, that's a good place to hide it. But since he's climbing, it's like right in his face, and so he gets his 3rd sphere out of 5.
Just gets lucky.
Yep. And on we continue, and he gets to the next trial, and he has to.
Man, I'm having a hard time remembering this story. Just like
graphic novel, you don't really get.
There was like no detail on that.
Yeah.
So good luck.
The next phase of the trial is, and so Kenton, there's not really any direction or guidance other than there's like markers saying go this way, and then there's a rule you have to find 5 spheres. But other than that, there's not really any clues where they are or like how to find them. But Kenton's able to kind of take a step back and observe what's going on. And the masters who are watching him, he notices that they kind of jump to certain places and then stop. And he's like, that seems like they're stopping there like on purpose. And so he's able to discover like where they're standing, there must be like a sphere in that area. And so he goes there. And
Good thinking right there.
Yeah.
Smart stuff.
Yeah. And then he goes there and he finds like this huge wall with like a bunch of holes and like little crevices. And then he realizes that the sphere is probably in there, because if you can, and he's like, son of a gun, because if he was able to manipulate like at least 15 strands, he could like just send strands everywhere and looking for it and do it pretty quickly. But since he only has one, he's like, there's no way I'm gonna be able to do this in time. Like I just can't. Which, how are you gonna search? He only has like 30 minutes left on the trial, and he's not like, how is he gonna search hundreds of little holes for the sphere?
And that doesn't sound like they don't glow or anything, so you won't be able to just...
No, it's just... But everything in this... The sand is, like, bone white, and so, like, a red sphere kind of sticks out in that sense. But, yeah, it's not like... Yeah, you can't, like, look like this. Well, I'll probably take just as long as looking with this. But he's able to get smart about it. And he looks around, and he notices by one of the holes there's a pile of blackened sand. So one of the masters, whoever hid these spheres, used sand to hide it. And when you use sand, it turns black. And so he's able to see where it was hidden based on the black sand that was left behind by a careless master.
Kind of sounds like these guys are really heavily reliant on their sand abilities.
And that's the point he's trying to
make.
make.
Don't use their brains hardly at all.
Yeah.
So, I think Kenton's onto something.
Yeah. I think that's the exact point that Kenton's trying to make. He's trying to say, even though I don't have this great, awesome power, like, I can still be, like, super good, like the 1 inch.
You can still be a person.
Like the 1 inch Bruce Lee punch or something like that, or like doing a finger push up. I don't know. So he finds.
Yeah, that's probably it. A finger push up.
Yeah, he finds his 4th. He finds his 4th sphere, which is really good. Like some masters, a lot of masters actually only find 3. And so right there, he's like already done better than most masters,
and with much less power.
Yeah, with like way less power, like such less power that he's considered the lowliest of the low of their order. And so it's already pretty big, but he's like all arrogant, and he's like, my father will never accept anything less than perfection. So he's like, I have to find the 5th one. But he's realizing that he's nearing the end of the course, and he's like, did I miss it? Like, is it behind me? He's like, there's only 10 minutes left. I can't go back and look. I just have to go forward and be happy that I got 4. But then as he's running to where the masters are standing at the finish line, he notices down in like a little, I don't even know what the word is.
A bowl? I don't know what you're talking about.
Like a bowl or something where there's like cliffs around it, and it's like down there. And he notices right in smack dab in the middle of that, there's a red sphere. Just right out there in the open, and he's like,
Yeah. Very suspicious, that is.
It's like that Tarzan scene. I love that Tarzan scene when Tantar is trying to get in the water when he's a kid, the elephant.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, there's piranhas. And his mom's like, no, there's not. And then he's like, it looks questionable to me. You remember that? I just think it's funny.
You're mixing up two things, but yeah, that's pretty much
that's what he thinks. Like, he sees this out in the open, and it's the last one. He's like, the last one should be the hardest. Like, something's up here. And he was right.
Yes. And one thing we didn't mention up until this point, but he came into this trial armed. he brought a
Oh,
sword.
that's right.
And like that's like I think he's the
Super
only one.
unconventional.
Like everyone
Yeah.
else doesn't come in with a sword.
They view it as primitive
Yes.
and like the tool of lesser soldiers.
Yeah, it's another thing that like all the other sand people are mocking, like "Gugh," scoffing at, I guess.
Yeah. And his dad even tries to make him not bring it, but he's like, it's not in the rules that I can't have a sword. So,
Imagine having to defend yourself like that to your own freaking dad. Good crap.
yeah, so he starts going down there and then immediately gets attacked by this insane sand creature.
Yes, which is where the graphic novel comes in. That's pretty cool because you actually
Yes.
get to see it. It is crazy. I'd be seeing my death if I read into that thing. Didn't they call it something?
Yeah,
Sandlings.
sandling. And it's huge.
It doesn't look like
you
you usually hear something like sandling and you're thinking like, oh, it's the baby of this creature, but no, this is like a full-fledged.
like, oh, this isn't a baby. This thing is freaking massive. So he says it's like, I think it's like 20 feet tall and like 10 feet wide, and he says it's probably not even close to all of its girth out of the sand.
Yeah, jeez.
So I'm like, holy cow.
This is making me
freaking huge.
super nervous to live on this planet if you're gonna run into these things.
Yeah, the second thing that gave me Dune vibes, because they have those sandworms. They're like just freaking massive that live in the sand.
They're so
Go
big in
around.
that world that they have to invent things that fly away.
And so he realizes that the last trial is this thing is guard. Essentially, I don't think it's like doing it on purpose, but essentially they put the thing on its nest and he has to get it. And
Yeah, this thing probably is just like this is where it hides to hunt.
Yeah.
Is my guess. Like there's some creatures in our world, animals as we call them here. These animals, like the scorpions and spiders, like dig under the sand, and then when someone walks, they feel the vibrations walking.
Yeah.
I bet you that's what this thing was doing.
Yeah,
Just
100%.
waiting for some
100%.
prey.
And this thing is extra scary. So he summons his strand, and he uses his special ability essentially, which is he can make that strand really fast, really precise, and really powerful. And so he shoots it at this thing, aiming for its eye. Which, I mean, if you think like a thing of sand, even if it's only like the size, the graphic novel makes it seem like it's decently, maybe like the size of an arm or something.
Yeah, it looks pretty big.
Like if that goes into your eye at the speed of whatever.
Jeez. I mean, a 1 grain of sand in your eye just makes you go, ah! I can imagine the entire...
concentrated blast of it. Isn't
How
that
many-
how they clean stuff? They like sand blast it. They like strip paint and stuff.
Yeah, when they need something rough, yeah.
So that's what this is. It's a magical. So it's not. But this creature has a special carapace that negates the investiture of the sand. So as soon as it touches it, just
It sucks all the energy out.
sucks all the energy, just like as if you just like threw a handful of sand at it. So he's like, shoot, dang. And then apparently this is a special type of creature that has resistance against investiture, but is ultra weak against water. Apparently, if you throw water on it, it just dissolves it like it's acid.
Yeah, which would seriously suck. Especially, like, man, that creature must be super weak against actual sand masters who can...
Yeah,
Change
and
water- sand
Kenton
into
even
water.
thinks that. He's like, if I was a real master and I could slatrify, I could just and it'd be over in 2 seconds. But he
Yeah.
can't do that, and so he has to get a little creative. And I think he gets pretty creative. I mean,
Yeah.
he gets really beat up. I don't think it shows this in the graphic novel, but he gets hit a few times. He gets a really bad slash on his shoulder. He gets hit in the chest. He's getting pummeled pretty much. And then the other masters yell at him and they say, "We can pull you out, but you have to ask. If you ask us, we'll get you out, but we can't intervene unless you ask. Because once you ask for help, the trial's over and you're kind of just..."
Yeah, so...
Done.
But he does the classic thing for the main hero that doesn't ask.
Yeah, he wants to do perfection. He
Yeah.
wants to get the 5th thing.
And he does use it. He uses his sword to help.
Yeah, and he also notices while he's fighting it that there's a 6th sphere lodged in the creature's carapace.
Yeah, which I wonder if that's supposed to be there on purpose, or like maybe it was another sphere that someone brought in and died to this creature and it got stuck there or something.
So I know from reading the chapter that his dad's the one that laid it out, and he sees the 6th one and he's like, 6? I only laid 5. And I think what happened is the reason that this creature lays their nests there is because this is a holy site for the masters, and they come there every year to test themselves and run this trial. And I bet this creature's like those crocodiles that have to eat one big meal and they can like last months. I bet he sits there and waits for masters to come fight him and he eats them.
I think that's exactly right.
That's probably where he gets the majority of his meals.
I wouldn't want to wait that long for some nasty humans.
Especially that creature that huge. I wonder if other things go by there if he like travels. Because that thing that massive probably has to eat
Definitely.
pretty regularly.
I guess I have no idea. We can't get into like the biology of this creature. Like, crocodiles are cold-blooded, so they don't need to eat that often. What is this thing? But we need a National Geographic episode about this creature. Then we'll know why it doesn't have to eat so often. Or we can learn how many other things come by that it just eats.
Yeah. So Kenton's getting his butt whooped. It's this 20-foot thing. You can't even barely fight it. And on top of that, he's starting to get dehydrated. And he's starting to push it to the point where he's going to get permanent damage. So he's got two things going on. But then he's able to slide under the beast. He rams his sword in between two pieces of interlocking carapace and kind of pries open a hole. And then from there, he's able to get his sand and send it in the hole. And this sounds like the worst way to die ever. So he shoots his sand into the insides and then commands it to just start going crazy and just shreds the organs.
Oh, jeez.
Of the thing. It's described as the thing just starts quivering and like shaking and spasming. And he just goes up and up and up and up until he finds his brain and kills it. And I was like, oh my, that sounds awful.
Yeah, that was
like getting shot
terrible.
in the gut with a thing of sand and it just shredding up your insides and then...
Hard pass. Just put a sword through my eyeball. I'd rather have that.
So he kills this beast and he's kind of sad. He's like, oh, this beast was probably hundreds of years old and I had to kill it. But I won the trial. So he got 6 out of 5 spheres and he's triumphant. And he's like, see, I did this. And then he passes out. And that is the end of the excerpt. So it's definitely just meant to get your appetite going and wanting to read more.
It definitely worked. I want to read more.
That's really good. Super interesting concepts. Brandon Sanderson always amazes me how he's able to just come up with these magic systems. I don't know if he just like sits there and thinks about it or if he just has a gift and just...
I think he really just does. He's got one of those like knacks where he doesn't think the same as everyone else and kind of comes up with his own stuff. But yeah, if he announced that he was making more, he was going to write a full novel about this white sand place, I'd be like...
Yeah,
sign me up. Where do I sign seriously. To get to pre-order it?
That's what I'm hoping. I really hope that a lot of these shorter stories in here get novels. I don't know how. I haven't really looked in these white sand graphic novels. I don't know if there's a lot or if there's just one or if it got a lot of attention. But I hope it did. I'll let the.
But yeah, I enjoyed that, and I really liked the connection with Tress and this place, even though Tress isn't technically like have a shard. Anyway, yeah, I liked it.
I liked it too. I thought it was good.
Well, for the next few episodes, we're going to be reading from Arcanum Unbounded. Pick yourself up a copy. It's a good read.
It is good. There's a lot of good stuff in there. If you haven't read it already.
Yes. What are we going to go through next week?
Next week we're going to go through the Sixth of Dust. I think that's what it's called, if I remember correctly.
Well, we're going to go through the Scadrian system.
Oh, Shadows for the Silence in the Forests of Hell. We could do that one, or we can start...
Well, we're not really going in order in this book. But next week, the Threnodite system. Shadows for Silence in the Forest of Hell. Sounds intriguing.
Yes.
Well, thank you for joining us for this little intermission type episode. In a few weeks, we'll get the next Secret project and we'll rip through that. But until then, we're going to visit Brandon's shorter stories. And then we're going to write him an email demanding more. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week.
See ya. It's over.